When I decided to open a brewery, I was not a home brewer. I was not making beer in the garage. I didn't have the secret recipe. But what I did do is I did have some business acumen, and I had this great process called EOS to help me go into some uncharted territories.
One of the places that I would love to kind of start off on is, when I read your background, there's a little bit of brewing, there's private equity, there's venture capital, there's 3 decades of experiences, multiple businesses running on EOS. Like you have done and seen quite a bit. How does one get started on this journey?
Oh, wow. Well, as an entrepreneur my whole life, one of the very first ventures that I was in, started that in about 1999-ish, and that particular business, Innovative Marketing Consultants, we were in the promotional merchandise business, so think logoed merchandise, I guess, for lack of a better term. We had some very unique products that were proprietary to us, but through that, after several successful years, just the journey for EOS started just by going to a talk that EO, if you know, Entrepreneurs Organization, was holding. And lo and behold, this is 2008, I'd say. And a gentleman walked in, and his name was Mike Payton, and he did a talk on EOS traction, gave a couple books out to the audience. I was fortunate enough to get one of those books. We read it, and we said that our good business could become a great business. So that's where we learned about it, hired the implementer, used him for about 5 years. I did take an exit from that company to start a brewery, Excelsior Brewing Company. I didn't have any beer knowledge, just the beverage industry. Well, the marketing company that I was talking about earlier catered to the beverage and sports industry. So that's how I learned about the beer industry. And when I decided to open a brewery, I was not a home brewer. I was not making beer in the garage. I didn't have the secret recipe. But what I did do is I did have some business acumen, and I had this great process called EOS to help me go into some uncharted territories. And that's not knowing one thing about the beer industry at all. Outside of the fact that it was booming, it was a great widget, and I had a great vision. So anyway, was able to take that and then navigate that business by using the tools of EOS that I had learned for about 5 or 6 years prior to that, and just use those to run that business. And was very successful and still own part of that business today. And since then, back about 5 years ago, I decided that you can't live on beer alone. But jokingly, I say that. But at the end of the day, I was looking for the next, as a visionary, more visionary, both integrator and visionary, but definitely lean more visionary, and decided it was time for the next chapter of my life. And sure enough, I decided that I should become an EOS implementer. And at the time, I really had aspirations of helping all my brewing brothers and sisters to implement EOS because it's a really hard industry to be in. And so I did a little bit of that, and then now I work with all sorts of different companies, as you mentioned. I'm part of a private equity firm. Part of it means that I am not a partner or an owner of the equity firm, but they have hired me to come in and implement EOS to their portfolio companies. So they get quite a few clients and more. They're small emerging businesses typically, so startup experience there. But on the other hand, then I have my own private practice where I have my own accounts, ranging from anywhere from $2 to $100 million in revenue, and helping those clients out with EOS as well. So that's kind of a long-winded way to answer your question.
It's awesome. When it's interesting when you talk about startups and EOS, and like you don't hear that very often. What do you see when you're coming into an organization that's a little bit smaller? Maybe they've got some funding, maybe they've got a grand vision. Are there differences in ways in which you help them think through the systems and the processes, or is it generally the same? It doesn't matter if you're 100 million or just getting started with just the core function leaders. Like it's all the same, and the problems are the same.
It's a great question. Yeah, a lot of the similar problems, just not as many complexities typically when you don't have as many moving parts, but there's a lot of complexities in a startup business, don't get me wrong. So, but at the end of the day, yeah, I think EOS, our target market, if you're going to work with an implementer, is typically 10 to 250 employees, about 2 to 50 million in revenue is kind of our sweet spot. But with the experience of me using it personally for a startup company, when I started that brewery, because I just decided I'm going to use those 5 foundational tools to run this business. And I found tremendous value in them. It helped me lay down the roadmap. So now that I've actually worked with startup companies as well, the foundational tools that we have, the rocks, the accountability chart, the VTO, the medium pulse, and the scorecard, these are fantastic, simple tools to use for any size business. So if nothing else, I think they're great starting points for any startups, entrepreneur, or small in their infancy stage. Lay down your accountability chart that it looks like today. Of course, you're probably sitting in all those seats, but lay it out and let's see what it looks like maybe in 2 or 3 years from now and what that's going to look like. So really great tools, knowing your data with your scorecard, knowing what your priorities are on your rocks, and that VTO. Oh my gosh, I just think it's such a wonderful tool for anybody in any business, especially startups, because now you have a 2-page business plan. Don't go waste a bazillion hours on trying to write down some business plan. Take your nice 2-page business plan and start with that as your foundation. So I believe all those tools apply to startups as well as larger companies.
I love that, especially when you talk about the business plans. It reminds me of one of the first companies I started, and I was asking around of like, do I need a business plan? Everybody's like, yes. And so went to Google. This was, I don't know, 20, 25 years ago. And it gives you templates and it tells you what a business plan is. And so I remember sitting down for months and putting together this like 25-page business plan of like what we were going to do and the market and how we were going to attack it and like all these different things. And then literally we launched and on the first day, everything changed. And to your point, like that's one of the beauties of EOS and the VTO is like you don't have to spend months and months putting together a 40-page document. Like it's all there, it's in your brain, and this is an easy and simple way to get everybody aligned around that vision.
Yep, we always say in EOS, less is more. So let's just give a 2-page business plan, less, but it delivers so much power and results. It gives the vision, and then it shows you the steps that we need and the traction that we have to get in the business to accomplish that vision. So it's wonderful, and at least start with that. And then if a banker needs something more elaborate, then you can use that as your foundation or as your inspiration.
Do you find that so? I've heard this a lot, and we experienced it at Hunt to Killer. I think we self-implemented. We were probably somewhere between 30 and 40 employees, and then we got an expert implementer to come in and really help us think through things. It was probably closer to 75 at the time. And there's this whole notion of like what we experienced and what other people experience, which is when you do your accountability chart and you're trying to get everybody on the same page, you very quickly realize that maybe there's some people that are on the team today that would be better off at a different organization. Do you find that when you're working with startups, like everybody is already kind of aligned and like they're excited and the vision's there, or do you find some of those similar complexities of like, wow, small team and like I figured everybody would have been on the same page, but no, there's some transitions and some changes that are going to have to be made.
Oh, I think I've seen it both ways. But I do believe, yes, in your startup, when you got 2 buddies or 2 friends getting together to start this business, if they know each other and they've been around each other long enough, their core values probably have come out within their relationship. So I think that that's helpful there. That they'll use, that they're probably already grounded on the same page. But we use these exercises in EOS to confirm those types of things. But I do believe that not everybody's always aligned, and we don't want them always to be aligned. We do want to have some great, healthy conflict in our organizations. We want people to fight for the greater good as well. So as far as core values go, though, that's kind of the basis of every relationship. We got to exhibit those, be part of our culture. So a lot of times in startups, if they've been around for a while together, they tend to have the same values, it seems like. Now, it's more when you find 2 different types of companies, or for merger acquisition, that's where maybe some conflicts will happen earlier on, so that we need to make sure that they all have that same conflicts. But now, I think you said the accountability chart then too, is in startups, you might have your 3 or 4 major functions in your business, but there's only 2 people sitting in every seat, right? So they're going to be probably have some capacity issues there too. But so yeah, I'm not sure if that answered your question 100%, but.
Yeah, I love I love the capacity issues. Like very small teams, and you're sitting in like 7 different seats. Or I think before EOS, they used to talk about wearing all these different hats in the business.
Yeah, I was going to say, and that's a big challenge. That's where you're trying to look at when you look at that accountability chart when there's only two people. Well, the funds might not be there to add the third, fourth, and fifth seat or the person in there. So that's where it gets to be challenging in those earlier stage companies. When you have a company that is a little bit better funded or quite a bit more funded, I guess, if you will, better funded, for lack of a better term, is they can make those moves. So, I know when you're working with your 5 to 10, maybe $20 million businesses, if all of a sudden there are capacity issues, there's more flexibility or more options to put in a place, add a person because of the resources are there. So, but that's early on in EOS when you're looking at that accountability chart as a startup and you just can't do anything about it because you don't have the money to hire, but at least you can get the vision out there and you know what your rocks are and you know what you got to work towards. Otherwise, you're going to be working 80 hours a week for the rest of your life.
I am back in startup mode. So I have gone from a company where we had up to 150 teammates to, now we have a handful. Getting back to that place of like things tend to sit on the issues list a little bit longer nowadays. Like they need to be resolved. You know how to solve them. You just may not have the capacity or the time to properly tackle them.
That's a great observation. Absolutely. So that's why we always, or at least for me, is try to set those rocks that, if you're a growing business, you're going to have capacity issues. So be forward thinking and figure out how you're going to put somebody in that seat. And then that's when the complexities, right? You start adding people, that's when the complexities come in. And that's where EOS as a whole is so helpful because it just is, its whole intention is to help keep things simple, simplify your business.
When you were running the promotional merchandise company, and it sounds like it was a good business and things were humming, and then you were at an EO meeting and you had a speaker come through. Had you guys hit a ceiling at that point? Were you like, this business is capable of more, but there's something that's blocking us from reaching our full potential?
100%. That's exactly. We didn't even know the words hitting a ceiling until we got the book, right? But yeah, then we had seen that we'd hit it, and the only ceilings that we were hitting is that we didn't have a great growth plan. We didn't have a VTO out there, so we didn't. Yeah, we wanted to grow, but we never had a real solid vision, a 10-year target saying this is what we're going to work towards, so that then every decision could work around that. So that's what it really helped for us. It gave us a lot more focus. So, and we were a good business. We weren't a struggling company, and a lot of my clients, most of them are, right? They just want to get better, or they found that they have hit some sort of ceiling. And in our situation, it was quite obvious where there was some, it was life-changing for me to understand that there was a visionary and an integrator, because I was trying to be both. And I really wanted to be a great integrator. And I just, I'm not wired that way to keep it all together. So it was really refreshing when we had those two roles. I did have a business partner, and it's natural where we both fit into, I went to visionary and he went to integrator. But as soon as we found out that, once I learned that it was okay to be a visionary and have these kind of crazy ideas and not always keep your eye on the prize, but have your number two, or in that fact, it was my business partner, so we were equals, but he was the integrator to keep the train on the track. So it was lovely to find out that I did have a place. And then I also sat in the sales leader seat as well for a long time, until we were in a point that I could actually then fill that seat and bring in a sales leader as well.
When you talk about integrators, when we look at like COOs and we look at other core function areas in which have outward facing titles that we're accustomed to, there are points where those folks actually hit a ceiling, and maybe the business has grown to a place in which they don't have the subject matter expertise, and there's a change that may need to get made. Do you see that very often in the integrator seat, or generally a well-oiled machine and an amazing integrator that understands the principles can take an organization as far as it can go?
I believe a little bit of both can happen there. I haven't had an experience personally. I've worked with about 40 different clients to where the job is outgrowing the integrator. I've had integrator turnover where maybe somebody's left and then we've had to plug in some other folks there. But I haven't been personally part of a company that's outgrown the integrator. Now, with that said, I believe that the issues are the same. A well a strong integrator should be able to keep up or even exceed the business. You know, if they're great at focus, they're great at keeping that leadership team focused on the prize, on the vision, making sure that they're harmoniously working together, doing a great job of LMA, leading them and managing them, which would hold them accountable, removing obstacles for them. So truly, I think great integrators can and grow with the business and stay with it, especially in rapid growing companies, for a strong integrator. Now, um, yeah, so I've seen it. I'm sure it can happen both ways, and that's usually the way I've seen it, where we've gone together, just using those tools and keeping our eye on the prize, setting a new 3-year picture, making sure that our goals are getting larger and the growth is there, and that we're staying focused on it. A great integrator can do that. Now, we've also said, and Gino will say this as well, that great integrators, they don't even need to know your business. So if you're hiring an integrator, they don't even have to know your business. If they're great, within about 3, maybe 6 months time, they're going to know all the intricacies of this unique business. And then it just goes back to plugging in the tools, keeping everybody working well together, staying focused, keeping their eye on the vision, bringing it down to get to the ground and executing on it day in and day out with accountability. And that's truly the job of the integrator.
I 100% agree with you there. I was on a call with somebody this morning, and she was talking about this idea of like will versus skill. And like skill you can train, but you can't train will. And so if they don't have will, they're not a culture fit. Like maybe there's some other things going on, like that becomes challenging. But to your point, you know, if you've got an integrator in there that has no experience but understands how to manage people, lead people, manage a business, keep the trains running on time, that person can really grow. When you think about your first company and you implemented EOS, you talked a little bit about the notion of like setting the 10-year target, putting together the VTO, and it really helped put things in place and understand like what everybody there was driving towards. Did you guys have values before?
Not one. No, we didn't really. I mean, we were so fortunate, I guess. I mean, we had it was 2 guys that went to college. We learned how to run a business in college. One's a CPA and one was a management degree. That was what we came into this. And so we both had our own first stint out of college, but then we came together. And so bottom line, we thought we knew everything, but we did it. We were fortunate enough that we did create a pretty solid culture without a definition of what it was that we wanted. The people that we were bringing on fit us like a glove. And a lot of them, I'm not going to lie, we were very fortunate, had been in part of our lives for a while too. So they joined our company and came over. So it wasn't, we didn't have any sort of thoughts of if they weren't going to be part of our culture or fit it, but it was undefined. And so as more employees came in that we didn't know, that's when it came a little bit more painfully obvious, right? You're like, ooh, you don't know who these people are. So, but yeah, we didn't have anything there. We were just a couple guys, buy low, sell high, hire people when you need to, and let's keep this ship going. And we were able to survive like that with the knowledge that we had. And then then we got the book traction, and we're like, oh wait, there is an actual system we could follow and actually achieve this. So it was life changing, and it's surprising to me then too, because we were doing good business. And then we had to be given this book that was basically common sense on how to run a better business. And it was so wonderful and I loved it because it was so easy. But it made me think, I'm like, this is common sense. This is easy stuff that we haven't been doing. And it just surprised me that we hadn't. And then when we plugged it in, then the results we had, it was wonderful.
I've heard this horror story, even on this show, I've heard this horror story at least a half a dozen times now, where the discovery of EOS and then going through the VTO exercise and establishing the values and sort of this aha moment from a partnership standpoint that maybe there wasn't 100% alignment on either what they believed the behavioral traits were to make this business successful. Maybe there was a difference in opinion from where we wanted to take this organization over the next 10 years, over the next 3 years. Are you one of the lucky ones where as all of these things were coming together, it's just like, no, like we we've actually always been aligned. It's just a matter of we've never documented this into this neat 2-page paper.
Right, exactly. So that's I've seen that a lot. I haven't had people put their heels in the sand and or in the dirt and say, no, we're not changing our ways, and had two business owners go toe to toe with each other. No, I haven't personally had that scene, but have I come in and said, okay, we're going to use these simple tools to gauge our alignment, and have they just been totally off base? Or they're just looking at each other. And when I ask one, I would like to do that sometime, just take them both into separate rooms and ask them, what's your long-term vision with this business? You know, where are you going to take it to? And get those answers from those folks. But for the most part, it hasn't been so much where we've had to get them 100% on the page because they've been so far apart. It's more just the ahas that, wow, we've never even talked about this. I mean, oh yeah, we want to grow it, we want to sell it, but nobody said when or what they need to grow it to or defined the purpose or why they're actually in business. You know, a lot of times it is people that just got together for a job. They started doing something and they were good at it. They didn't even realize they had a purpose. And then when we start drilling down on it, then all of a sudden they do realize that, you know, they are solving a problem that does drive them, and it makes them pretty excited. So a lot of times then the vision can come back to that whatever their purpose of the business is. So, but yeah, for the most part, it's been those, hey, we've never talked about this before kind of conversations that I've been like, really? All right, back to that common sense stuff.
What like as you're implementing, what's the most common thing that you run across where it's like, I know this is going to be maybe not a touchy subject, but like a friction area, or this is going to be one of the biggest challenges to like get this organization over the hurdle, to get them optimized and all on the same page?
Well, you know, it's interesting. I'm in Minnesota, right? So we have this passive aggressive attitude going on. So this EOS is wildly successful. So many companies up here running on EOS, so many great implementers. And I believe that's it, because EOS helps you enter the danger, so to speak, if you will, to where we give vehicles or tools to help engage into conversation, like the people analyzer and just simple things to try to engage in conversation so that people can have maybe a difficult conversation if they have to get into it. So that's so up here, EOS has been wonderful for that and helping people enter the danger. And so I think nationally it does a great job. I always joke I would love to implement a team like out of New Jersey. I've never worked with them. And to see if they hold back. So, but that's our job as implementers, is we do have to enter that danger sometimes. We have to ask the difficult questions. If we see the issue out there, if we think if we have the solution, we have to try to guide that team to go that direction, or at least address it from that angle, so that if it isn't the right answer, that's fine, as long as we get some great conflict in that room, some good, valuable conflict, so that we are fighting for the greater good of the business. And we always want to make sure that that's the deal, and we're not using consensus to solve our issues. But at the end of the day, yes, it's EOS does help us have those difficult conversations and uncovers a lot of issues and sore spots sometimes, but always for the greater good of the business.
As you're like navigating this, like let's say you're in a session and you're really trying to push folks into that danger zone, like what are some tactics or some things, methods that you use to get them there? Like, are you spotting where you just have this intuition where someone on the team is holding back? Are you just not seeing enough action in the room and you're like, I got to throw a grenade and run and see what happens? Like, what are you seeing and what are you doing?
Well, first of all, if you ever see anybody roll their eyes or have a little sigh when somebody says something, that's a really good, that's one where we hit the brakes. We pump the brakes, and I'm like, hey, what's up with the look over there? You know, come on, let's throw that on the table, if you will. So I do call people out. I mean, body language speaks a ton, and we as implementers, as facilitators of that conversation, we have to recognize that and see when somebody's fidgeting in their seat and try to ask them what's on your mind. But it's asking more questions when they give you responses as well, to go deeper, to really help them understand what they're saying, because so many people, they're trying to say what's on their mind, but they sugarcoat it or they put a layer on top of it. So just simple questions like, why? Tell me more. I don't understand. And just to ask those questions again, just to get them to repeat themselves, because when they repeat themselves, a lot of times they're not repeating themselves, and a different answer will come out, or they'll even hear them. They'll answer some issues sometimes when they're trying to explain the issue. So that's those have just been some really great tactics that I've had. I just continue asking more and more simple questions like, I don't get it, I don't understand. Well, how does that affect you? How does that affect other people? Or or we have to paraphrase or have them just rephrase it again for us so that we completely understand what their issues are.
Got it. Got it. And I'm assuming as you're thinking through, like, once we get the issues on the table, like, do you take those issues at face value, or do you keep going? Do you keep taking them deeper?
Yeah, that's the I in IDS, right? We have to identify. So, a lot of times the issue is just a symptom of a bigger root cause. And that's why you got to do the tell me more is I don't get it, or, just continue asking more and more probing questions to so that we know we've hit that sensitive spot. And then once we've nailed it, now we can actually go into some good discussion to try to solve it.
And what about, like, when you look at the comfort level in the room, like, let's say you're seeing some body language or some size or some other things, like how do you start to get folks comfortable enough? The thing that I always used to hear, especially when we implemented at Hunt to Killer, was not necessarily like fear of reprisal, but like putting themselves out there puts them in a vulnerable position in which they feel maybe like leveraged or used as a weapon later down range. And obviously, like, we were able to get past those moments just through time and setting the pattern and doing the reps to make sure that people understand that the action is for the greater good of the organization, and we start moving in a better direction. What are some things that you try and do to get people comfortable in that session room where maybe they wouldn't otherwise be?
Well, probably goes way before the session room or even beyond the session room, was that there has to be a really good level of trust in that room. And so this is going back to Patrick Lencioni and the trust pyramid in 5 dysfunctions of a team. And this is where so much of EOS is based off of this as well. Or as Lencioni is one of the big inspirations for Gino when he put together Traction. And that Lencioni trust pyramid, if you know anything about it, but bottom line, it's a pyramid, and on the top of the pyramid is results, and on the bottom is trust. And everything starts with trust. And now it's not just I trust that you said you're going to get it done, that you're going to do it. That's one level of trust, but we're trying to really bring in vulnerable based trust, meaning that we get everybody in the room to do exactly what you just said. Now, this doesn't happen overnight. But I'm willing to expose maybe a weakness by throwing a suggestion out there. I might look like maybe it's a terrible idea, but I'm not afraid to throw it out amongst my peers because I have a high level of I feel I can be vulnerable. I trust them that I can do that, and it's not going to get whiplash. Nobody's going to bite my head off. So, and that, though, all starts with getting to know each other on personal levels more. So that's why team building is so important in companies, whether it's just maybe a happy hour or go bowling or throw darts or fishing, whatever it is, but trying to get people together outside of that office. We get to know each other. And the better we get to know each other personally, the more vulnerable we get to be more comfortable with people. So that takes time, though. And so that's why teams need to be focusing on team building to try to get it to a point where people can let their guards down. And after that, then we can get their commitment, or we can engage in great debate. That's the next level of the Lencioni trust pyramid, is that so if I can have great debate because we trust each other and we can say anything out there, you may or may not get your way out of that debate, but you fought for the greater good of the business. And when we've decided this is the way the boat's going to go, we go up the next rung of that Lencioni trust pyramid, and that's getting commitment. We can get commitment from everybody on the team because if they trust each other and they've been heard, they know that their opinions or their thoughts have been well heard and taken into consideration. And so that they can get on that bus. They can commit now that we've decided to go this, in which then that means that we can hold everybody accountable, because that's the next rung of the trust pyramid, is that if you're on board and you commit and you're paddling with us, then I can say we can hold you accountable for getting everything done so that the top rung of the pyramid happens, and that's that results. So that's the Lencioni trust pyramid, and that's it doesn't happen in every room immediately, but boy, after a year or two, especially working with clients, you just see people letting their guards down and issues getting solved faster. And it's just a really special thing. So I know you're looking for the immediate, what do you do in that room at the time? And that's asking more questions, but it does go back to that trust, and trust isn't established overnight.
What about, you talked a little bit about, like, getting things done, or some of the trust comes from doing what you say you're going to do. When when you find that, like, let's say it's a to-dos, let's say it's maybe it's a metric on their scorecard, like when you see someone struggling, how do you start to differentiate of like, is this an underperformer or is this a culture fit of like doesn't understand or doesn't want accountability versus like, I don't know, maybe other folks aren't helping that individual out to be able to achieve this because it's too great or too big um or that to do all of the things that person completed over the last 7 days were a much higher priority than whatever that to do was that was assigned the last L10. How do you differentiate between like it's a performance issue and like no, we need to give this individual some help?
Well, every situation is a unique snowflake. Every client's a snowflake, so everything comes in differently. But at the end of the day, we use data to make our decisions. We don't use our egos and our emotions. So we watch those scorecards. We watch that to-do list. If it's not getting done, we got to just drill down. We got to throw it on an issues list and figure out what the situation is. If the person is definitely having a capacity issue, then that has to come up, and we have to solve for that. And it goes back to, yeah, it could be maybe they don't have the get it. Maybe they don't understand the business. Maybe it's just maybe the job's outgrowing them. That certainly can happen. But if they don't get it, typically we can find some sort of training to elevate them up. If they exhibit our core values, that's almost more important than doing the job well. So if they get our core values, they fit our culture. If they have the bandwidth, we truly think it, we can give them some sort of training to elevate up the get it. Some people just don't want it, and that's a harder one to change. And we don't want them to be here, and we want to help them get to a spot that they want to be at as well. And sometimes that's the big reason that somebody's not getting those weekly to-dos done, because they're just not motivated. They just don't love the gig, and that's totally fine. Let's help each other out. Let's get you in a good spot, and let's get us somebody who wants that gig. And then it does come to, and then capacity, like I said, you got to really just weigh out the capacity and say, all right, are they putting in the time to get this stuff done? If they're not, then we have some issues there. But a lot of times maybe there is a capacity issue, that there's just too many plates spinning for that person. But one thing that's known is that some people are way more efficient than other people, right? So there's a lot of people that can spin a lot more plates than I can spin. And so you just got to take everything with a grain of salt, do your research on it, but use data, set measurables to make sure that people are achieving those results that you want. And if they're not, if they fit your culture like a glove and they just can't do the job, well, like you were at one time at 30, 40, whatever, how many people in the organization, see if there's another spot that we can put them in that they'd actually fit better with the team. But unfortunately, if you're a for-profit business, sometimes we have to make a change.
One of the things that happens, I think it's on the annuals. You'll correct me on this one, but the leadership team actually does a people analyzer in like public in front of each other and go through the values and the GWC. Have you seen where like a leadership team on the spot has like challenged the GWC of someone else that was in the room?
100%. And if it doesn't happen, I get concerned. They're all just yes people. So we want to make sure, but yes, of course. And tempers can flare, tears can fly, and things like that. I've had people not come back to the leadership team in those situations at times, or even leave the organization if people can speak candidly. But great people, great leaders will then say, okay, if you genuinely don't think I get it, what do I got to do to get on this boat so I can elevate it up? So to answer your question, yes, we do the GWC thing right away on the very first day, our focus day together. We establish the functions of that leadership team, and then we put the roles in there, the major roles, and then we sort of go through it. And too often, what's happened, I've seen in the past, where yes, if people can be truly open and honest, yes, we might have some issues in that conversation, but too often I've seen it happen where they are being that passive aggressive person despite us trying to get that out of them, and they've said yes, yes, yes. And sure enough, a month or two down the road in our journey, somebody might come back and say, upon further evaluation, I'd like to change my answer. And so when they just get more into this practice of EOS, it seems like they get a little bit more open and honest with each other. But I've seen it happen that way. And then, yes, of course, we do ask our integrator to be doing quarterly conversations with those leadership team members and expressing that out after we've gone through it initially, and making sure that every quarter they're talking about the GWC and the core values if they exhibit them. So, and we do that through everybody throughout the organization should be having a quarterly conversation doing that people analyzer. And yeah. So, but to answer the initial question is, yeah, there's been sparks can fly, and a lot of times you just come out and it reconfirms that we've got all the right people in the right seat, and it's great.
When you think about like the departmental L10s or the departmental quarterlies, like is your suggestion, or is it the EOS pure way to do it is to run the very same exercises in an open environment like that through every kind of layer in the organization that's having those types of weekly, quarterly, and annual planning sessions?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, they might not be in the leadership teams. We're running a full 8-hour day, 7 hours a day, plus or minus an hour for that leadership team. Departments don't have to usually have the luxury of that kind of time, so they can compress that down to whatever works for them. But yes, in those meetings, they should be establishing their rocks, looking at the scorecards, making sure everything's dialed in, making sure that everybody's aligned on the vision of not only the company, but that department too. I mean, I have seen where people have had their departmental VTOs in addition to the company VTO, so that the front page is all going to match. But on the back side, yeah, each department might have their own one-year plan. They might have their own rocks. Well, they will have their own rocks. And they'll have their own set of issues, right? So everything migrates just down to the rest of the organization, and everybody should have a number or score, a measurable, or a couple of them that they're being kept on track. And all the same rules apply for all those tools.
When you're looking at a leadership team, like one of the hardest things, and I realize that this is just human nature. Like at first, when we talk about change, and EOS is a change. So let's say it's a company that's not operating on EOS or coming in, they're implementing. Like human nature is kind of anti-change. Everybody enjoys status quo. It's just how we're made. And sometimes it takes some people longer to like get them to understand that this is for their better, for the company's betterment, and everything else. Are there, like, do you set a timeline, or when you see that there's leaders at the senior leadership team level that may not totally be bought in yet? Is this something where you're like, 3, 6, a certain time frame, or is it like, hey, if after one quarter, like, we still have people that don't believe in the system, and as a visionary and as an integrator that this is the direction you're taking the company, like there are serious conversations that need to happen at this point.
100%, because once the leadership team or the entrepreneur especially says that we're going to run on EOS, we got to get on the boat. Because if you're not going to get on the boat and share our vision with us, you're just going to be chipping away at our culture. You're not going to do a great job with us as well. So yes, we have to absolutely make changes for the greater good of the business. And yes, have I seen this? 100%. Am I going through it right now with an organization? You bet I am. I got a major producer or sales leader that just doesn't know how EOS is going to help them as a whole. So my question to him is, do you have a better way? Because we're willing to hear it. We in EOS says that in order to operate, what we just say, in order to be successful or your best, if you're going to be the best leadership team you're going to be, you must run on one operating system. And so now what's really beautiful about EOS, what Gino did this almost 20 years ago-ish, came up with this and put it out there. Well, there's been over 25,000 companies that have used implementers and had great success. There's 150 plus thousand companies downloading these tools and using them. It's a proven process. It's a proven system. So unless you got something up your sleeve that's better, go do it. Great. I think that's wonderful. But either get on the boat with us or get off the boat, because this is the way it's going. And we need you to grab a paddle, and I need you to row with us in the same direction so that all the arrows are pointing in the right direction. So yeah, we have some difficult conversations coming up. In fact, I do with a client right now that, a sacred cow, a major producer in their business is kind of putting their heels in, but they have their reasons. But we have to see how we're going to work this out and see if I can get them to have some blind faith in this beautiful system that's worked. It just, when people challenged it, in fact, in my own organization, when we had it, when we implemented, we had people that challenged it or just said, oh no, because a lot of people, all they hear is that we're going to hold you more accountable. Well, that is true. That's exactly what we're going to do. But we're going to tell you why. We're going to say, here's where we're going. In order to get there, we got to do these things. So let's us hold each other accountable to make sure we're going to do that. And in my own organization, we did have people that put their heels in, and that's all they heard, and they thought, oh, they're just going to be watching, the man's going to be watching, or they're going to have helicopter managers and stuff like that. Well, we gave it 4 or 6 months, and those same people were just as happy as everybody else in the organization because now the expectations were clear both ways. And EOS is really good about that. So there is going to be some resistance at first by some people, and if they can't get on the bus, we just need them to take a step off. And I don't care how good they are and what they do. I'd like to try to put some energy into getting them to believe in the system, but if it's going to be putting more effort and keeping us not focused on the vision, a change might need to be made.
I love what you just said there, and it reminds me of like once everybody understands what this system is, like it actually provides the ultimate freedom because there is no helicopter management. Like the numbers are on the board, and like everybody understands where we're rowing and why we're going in that direction. It just takes some time to get there, and it's great. It's like implementers like you are amazing because you've lived it. And so it's not just like, hey, I read this book and I think it's a good system and like, let's go do it. It's like, no, like I've used this in all of my businesses. I've helped other people in similar industries. And now I'm such a believer in this process and in this system that like, this is all I do. Which I think is just a very compelling argument.
Yeah, I drank the Kool-Aid early on and really loved it. I wasn't, I read the book and I was like, why initially, this is way back 15-ish plus years ago when I got the book, and I said, well, we're not really doing anything wrong, so do we need to change? And then after I heard Mike Payton talk and kind of do the recap, the 90-minute meeting of that book, then I was like, I jumped on. I mean, that was hook, line, sinker. I was in. And I started drinking the Kool-Aid. Now, fast forward, I saw what it did with me. So now I've really drank the Kool-Aid, and now I'm helping people and I'm helping companies. And when we do our quarterly sessions, one of the things we do in our check-in is we ask companies what's working and not working in the business. And there hasn't been a meeting yet that I haven't been in that people don't say on the working side something about EOS. EOS is working. The level 10 meetings are working. This is working. Something about it. And I got the chills right now because it works. It's so wonderful. And I thank Gino Wickman so often. I've said this to people to where I'm like, thank God Gino kind of put the bow on all these great, proven, timeless concepts and made it really simple for people to follow because it's simple enough that I can teach it. I can do it myself. I can teach it, and I can see the value it brings to people. And my goodness, being an implementer is probably the best job in the world because you get to see how many companies you're helping and it's just how many ceilings you've helped them break through or you name it. It's really a wonderful process. And obviously I've drank the Kool-Aid. I sound like a salesperson for them because I love it. So that's what I got.
I find it fascinating that you work with startups because I don't have many conversations with US implementers that have a focus there. One of the things in early stage businesses is this idea of pivots. And so I understand that every business should be evolving because nobody wants to wind up like Kodak and like every business should be trying to see over the horizon what's coming and how to get there. But those types of pivots or iterations happen much faster in startups as you're trying to find product market fit and you're in this constant state of iteration. When you think about EOS, like, how do some of the tools of EOS help either facilitate those conversations or help provide the insight needed for the decision makers to be able to say, it's time to pivot. We see an opportunity here. Let's go after it.
So just to clarify, I don't focus on startups. I don't at all. In fact, my target market is probably more 5 to 50 is kind of where I would focus for me personally. But I do have a great client that does, which is a private equity and VC firm that invests and buy businesses, and they do focus on startups. So I get a lot of opportunities to work with these startup companies. So, but with that said, I just did a talk at it was Startup Week here in Minneapolis a couple weeks ago. And I sat down with some pretty successful young entrepreneurs. I guess that doesn't matter, but they had already had their first successful exit and they were young. And I just thought that was great. And so we were on a panel together and I asked them the same question. How does that happen to you as well? I mean, what are your thoughts on this? Because with established companies, we don't have to pivot all that. I mean, we pivot, but it's a big boat. It takes a while to turn, right? So So, and the smaller ones. So what we kind of chatted about, and this is not EOS Pure, and Gino, I'm so sorry for if I said this, but you just probably can't wait for a quarterly meeting. You might have to do a monthly quarterly meeting. You know what I mean? You're still having your level 10s weekly, but maybe once a month we're getting to, depending on your startup phase at where you're at. But let's look at it. Let's make 1 month rocks. Let's do these types of things so that we're really staying, keeping our eye on the prize. Because things are happening so much faster and we want to be able to move faster. So we talked a little bit about that. How could we increase the frequency of the strategy meetings in addition to shortening the rocks and trying to get things done faster so that when changes do come up. So that was one great thing that we just kind of came up with at the panel. I don't have a ton of experience with it, but it seemed to make some sense to me.
I love that piece of advice where it's and you know, I don't know if it's setting monthly rocks or being a little bit flexible or just setting I don't know what that looks like, but being able to have some sort of quarterly-ish meeting or just like deeper dive into some of the things that are going on in the organization and doing that on a monthly basis. I might steal that. So thank you for that. What types of businesses do you focus on? What do you look for? Where have you found your niche? And I ask that because there are people that are going to be listening to this and they're going to say, I love everything John just said. I love his background, and I need some John in our lives. What do you really focus on as a prospective client?
You know, when I came out, I thought just to get the word out, I should probably stay focused in one industry, but I didn't love that, and I don't know how successful it was, and that was right during the height of COVID, right when we started. So basically, EOS is industry agnostic, and I chose that if I try to go after one vertical industry, I'm probably just going to limit my opportunities to help companies. So through that journey and discovery process, boy, I got to tell you, the types of companies I work with are all over the board. And I wouldn't want it any other way because I am a visionary guy. I'm not going to lie. So if all of a sudden if I was doing the same types of companies every day, I might get a little bored. And, so I love the fact that I have anything from, I seem to right now have a run on assisted living companies. I have 4 assisted living clients right now, and it was just from referrals, and that's why. But everyone's different, so it is important. It's wonderful, wonderful. But it is the great part about my job, though, is I get to look under the hoods of so many different companies in so many different industries, from elevator companies to, cryogenic storage facilities to massive spray drying companies, huge air sprayers, the guys who make the Kraft macaroni and cheese powder, that kind of stuff. I wouldn't want it any other way. I love it. So that's been, and fortunately, I've been doing this now, 5 years I'm coming up on, and been doing this for a while. So I get introduced to most of my clients are coming from referrals from just people that are in peer groups with each other, other folks. So I'm not catering a vertical market whatsoever, but I do like to go do talks to like different types of companies. I've enjoyed the manufacturing companies a lot. I love the trades. So I wouldn't just say I want to stay in one. I love them all, and I like the variety that they give me and the different types of businesses. And it's what's interesting with a lot of those different businesses, a lot of times the issues all are the same. People and capacity issues, it seems like, and culture. So
do you do virtual as well, or do you travel, or do you really look for kind of within a certain proximity?
Yeah, my hope is that I can stay in my backyard. I got 2 little dogs. I'm an empty nester now, so I got to walk the dogs and stuff. But no, but I will travel. I found that I get such a high out of helping people. I don't care if it's here. I don't want to be a full-time traveler, but I will travel. I do enjoy taking clients, to travel, sometimes drive time too. I'm in Minnesota, so I like the surrounding states because, where I get some of my clearest thinking is windshield time, right? So I love that. I don't mind that at all. I get a lot of my books read when I'm driving or traveling. So it doesn't matter. But my goal was 50 miles from my back door so I could be in and out in a day. But I have been doing some traveling. I do enjoy it, and I'll just handle a lot of that on a case-by-case scenario.
Got it. And by the way, the travel, it's like underrated. For some reason, I've been in a vehicle quite a bit over the last 2 months, and I have forgotten how much like deep thinking I can do while I'm on the road, or books that I can listen to, or even people. Like I call my mom a lot when I'm on the road. Like there's a lot of interesting things that we don't do when we're just in our basements. So
it's so true. Funny thing that I promise I'm keeping my hands on the wheel and I'm watching the road, but I've been doing just some deep thoughts, or I'll debrief a meeting. My notes, I'll do it verbally while I'm driving, or I'll do the On the Road with John show or something like that. Just some clarity thinking that I'll record myself actually when I'm doing it, or I'll work on something so I can see myself do it. So it's really great. Good windshield time is good use of time.
And if someone just listened to it and they fit all of those wickets, they want to get a hold of you, how would they get a hold of you, John?
JohnKlick.com. So my last name is, so it's John with an H, John, and the last name is Klick with a K, Klick. So JohnKlick.com. That's my first and last name. Really easy to find me. Puts me right to my site. Otherwise, EOS Worldwide, you can search me out there as well. And I would love to chat with anybody that wants to learn more about EOS, or if they just want to tell me their experiences or get in a community. And I do like to host self-implementer sessions a lot, where companies are running them themselves, but they just want some help sharpening those tools. I love to do that free of charge help sessions. So if anybody's interested in that, please reach out to me. I'd be happy to help any way I can. Help first.
Awesome. All right. Thanks so much, John. I appreciate you coming on. This was an awesome conversation, and it was a lot of great insight, so I appreciate it.
Thanks, Ryan. I appreciate you having us and pushing the good word on EOS. Thanks so much.